What up, Misfits? Welcome to the Misfit Heroes podcast. My name is Chris, and together we are going on a journey. Misfits, recently there's been this buzzword flying around, and it seems like no one actually understands what it means. Have you ever heard of someone talking about non-fungible tokens, or NFTs? Which one's your favorite? A CryptoPunks, a VFriends, or a Bored Ape Yacht Club? Was that last sentence a little bit overwhelming for you? Well, if so, you're not alone. NFTs are a new financial contract platform, and while most people online consider them a JPEG picture of a bear, they're actually the future of online ownership and something that I think you're going to want to know more about in the future. Now, if you still have zero idea what I'm talking about, don't worry, I got you. Here's some facts that you may not know. While the most expensive NFT sold for $92 million, the average NFT sells for about $200. And while each day thousands of NFTs are made or minted, NFT sales account for millions of dollars per week. I've even seen someone sell their house as an NFT. While I was at Podfest in Orlando, Florida, I got to sit down with Seth Silvers, the CEO of StoryOn, and the host of the podcast, The Business, which is being released season by season as an NFT. Now, if you don't learn something from this conversation, I will be truly surprised. Seth and I go into detail about what NFTs are, why the passion tends to overshadow the purpose when people talk about NFTs, the actual use cases and utilities of the NFT platform, and most importantly, why you should care. Get ready for the future, Misfits. It's time to sit down with Seth Silvers.
Playing the Misfit Heroes podcast.
All right, Seth, First, I want to say this is the most guerrilla podcast I have ever done.
I love it.
So we are recording live from Podfest, and this is just so on the fly. We went to one room, and there wasn't anybody there, and then they said we couldn't do it, and then we went to another room, and you can't see the whole mess of wires we've got hidden right over there, but it is a mouse nest.
It's all right. We made it. We're here.
But I love it. It's so guerrilla. It's so like pirate radio. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's good. And it's been a couple years since I've done an in-person podcast recording. So this is fun to be able to do it in person as opposed to just jumping on the computer next week.
Yeah, and we were just talking about it. It feels good. It feels real good to do it. So this is real exciting. You have a very exciting topic to talk about, and you are in a new and innovative space that is just, I don't know, there's all kinds of things. It's the biggest keyword in the world right now as far as an investment product or as far as a smart contract, but NFTs. Come on, NFT man. What is an NFT and why should the regular person care?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's been so much conversation about NFTs. I think for the last year or so, I've just been learning as much as I can. I run a podcast agency, and so we have a bunch of podcasts that we produce. And so I've been really interested in where does this intersect? Where do podcasts, particularly where do content creators and NFTs really intersect? So the way that I like to look at NFTs is as an access card.
Okay.
And so I think that if we can look at an NFT, it's a digital access card where you're going to get access to something and that access is authenticated. Right. So I think if we break it down to the most simple form, let's look at it as that. Like, don't worry about all the smart contracts yet. Just look at it as NFTs. It's a way to digitally prove that you own something. Okay. So in the same way, we might have a paper deed for your house and that proves that you own that. Now it's possible to initially have a digital form of ownership over something. And so at the end of the day, think of it like an access card, like a credit card or an ID, where that ID gets you a drink when you're 21. That ID gives you the ability to drive a car. IDs can be faked.
Yeah.
NFTs can't be faked. And so I like to look at it simply in the most simple form as NFTs. It's like an access card where if you own an NFT, you're going to get access to something that nobody else can get access to because they don't have that NFT.
It is the future, and it is honestly a little bit mind-boggling to me. Mm-hmm. When people hear about NFTs, all you ever hear about is like a Bored Ape Yacht Club or a World of Women, and like people always say, "Oh, it's a JPEG of a bear." Like, that's not the case for it. Can you explain smart contracts a little bit further and what exactly that means? I know you said it's like an access card, but
Yeah.
what are some of sort of the real world uses for a smart contract?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just kind of say, like, I'm not an expert in this, and I've heard multiple people say in the last couple of days, like, if you hear people saying they're an expert in NFTs or crypto, like, run the other way. Like, this is all so new that everybody's just learning. Everybody's learning, kind of building this as it goes. And so I can share what I've learned, but also, I welcome feedback and I welcome other ideas, and that's part of the learning process. But the smart contracts really are what makes an NFT unique. And so attached to an NFT, there's going to be a smart contract behind the NFT in the code of that JPEG or that image that you own. And that smart contract is going to say initially what you get access to and what you don't. And it's also going to say if this is sold, are there royalties associated with it? So, Mark Cuban he's become a big name in the crypto space and he's really involved in it. And he's talked about smart contracts a lot because, like, you look at sports tickets, and sports tickets are naturally, they're resold all over the place. But if I buy a Mavs ticket for $100 and then I sell it to you for $200, traditionally I get all those $200. The Mavs don't get anything.
Right.
So now if that ticket is an NFT and the Mavs create that NFT, they can write into the smart contract that every time this is sold, that the Mavs get 10% of that. And so they're going to get these royalties for it. That sounds like a really simple, like, use case of it. But when we look at it, you think about artists, you think about musicians, you think about, sports teams and different things where anytime there's a resale market, usually the original creator of that art isn't getting the royalties on the long run. As opposed to, you think about if you went to a record store today, if you're a record person and you bought a record, what would be how different would it be if, even though it's 50 years after that record, if 10% of that record sale at the used record store was going back to that artist? So that's kind of the concept of, like, a smart contract is behind the NFT. The smart contract is going to initially determine every time there's a transaction for this artwork or for this NFT, this image, it's going to say what utility, what value does that person get? And also some of that money is going to go back to the original creator. So that's why artists have jumped into the NFT world, because they're like, oh my gosh, I can get continued royalties for my stuff. And that's really some of the things that are really game changing, is if you're creating art or you're creating NFTs and those are being sold from person to person, you're actually going to get royalties in perpetuity. And that hasn't really been possible from a technical standpoint. And once you get really into the technology behind it in the blockchain, the reason all of that works is because the blockchain is it's a transparent public ledger. And so every transaction on the blockchain, this is where it gets really complicated. So we don't need to go too into it, but, like, every transaction on the blockchain technology is public. So initially, if you have an NFT that's been sold 100 times, we theoretically could look on the blockchain and track every time that's been sold back to when it was originally created.
Yeah.
And so that makes counterfeiting not possible. That's where the authentication comes in, is because if you say that you have a Bored Ape and you're showing it on your Twitter profile and you show the JPEG to people, we can actually go and we can look online at your wallet and we can see this is not a real Bored Ape. And there's tools that if you're going to a live party and you're trying to get a Bored Ape in, then, people are going to, like, whatever tools are being used for that, we're going to realize, oh, this isn't an authentic ape. Like, this isn't authenticated because this actually isn't on the blockchain. And so it kind of removes the counterfeiting aspect of a lot of, like, ticketed items or different things, to where the smart contracts are going to show that ledger. And it's also going to show, where are royalties going for resale. And that's where a lot of the value comes from, is in what you tell the smart contract to do. And the last thing I'll mention about the smart contract is it makes it possible to split where all that revenue is going. And to anybody listening, I apologize if there's background noise or different things. We're, like, in between conference rooms here.
Well, like I said, it's guerrilla.
It's guerrilla. But one exciting thing we're doing for this in the podcasting space, and we're working on, is the ability to say, hey, revenue from this podcast can be split between certain people. And initially, revenue that comes into a podcast, we could write into the smart contract that because you and I have this conversation, if revenue comes into this episode, if revenue is generated because of this episode, then that revenue could potentially be split between our digital wallets. And so you could actually be getting royalties based off of a podcast that you were on 3 years ago. And that's never been possible before, but that's the kind of thing that's going to be possible with the smart contracts.
Well, I think the technology, it's honestly kind of fascinating, and I've heard it explained like that before, and I think that it's definitely something that can be such a game changer. You know, we are very heavy on this podcast in the nonprofit space. I speak to a lot of nonprofits, and one of the things that people are worried about with nonprofits is, you know, oh, I'm donating all this money. I've even seen a common focus being the 80-20 rule, where people spend like 80%, the nonprofit, 80% goes towards the cause and 20% goes towards operating the nonprofit. A lot of people are concerned, like there's some major nonprofits that still do a good thing, but you know, I read something like 9 cents on every dollar goes to the actual cause. The rest goes to functioning the nonprofit. So it's really interesting to me to see how NFTs could sort of change that space.
Right.
Like you said, not a picture of some random monkey,
right?
But you know, the actual use case.
Yeah, it's the technology behind it, and it's the transparency behind the finances, to where initially with any kind of crypto wallet, you can see where the money is going. You can see, there's transparency where if our podcast community that we have, if we're generating revenue, they're going to see where that revenue is going.
Yeah.
And so again, it brings forward this authenticity to where it's like, it's forced authenticity, which I think is good for culture because there's transparency.
We need that for people.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the transparency that is going to be created because of all of this technology, because of this like public technology, the blockchain, smart contracts, NFTs, all this stuff. I think that's where the innovation is in the transparency behind it. And that means, there's going to be a lot less middlemen who are making all the money. All these middlemen industries, like that's where there's all this talk about decentralization. There's so many industries where there's middlemen that are, kind of just skimming off the top.
Yeah.
But they're skimming a lot off the top.
Yeah. And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that a whole lot. Okay. But there is, let's go back a second to what you in particular are doing in the podcast space for NFTs. Because you said that I think it's going to help collaboration a whole lot. And I think that, people are, I think that is a real opportunity for growth. Do you think this is something that's going to just sort of, how quickly do you think this is, I know it's very new, but how quickly do you think this is going to explode? Because I hear people using NFTs as a buzzword like every single day, but as an actual use case, when do you think this is all going to happen? Come on, go into the crystal ball.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Won't you be a millionaire?
I think probably, my guess, again, these are all guesses. I don't know. My guess is I wouldn't be surprised if, it's 2022 now. I wouldn't be that surprised if by, 2025, 2026, so 3-4 years from now, most events that you're getting into or ticketed items. So anytime you're wearing a wristband or buying a ticket, I bet you that it's going to be an NFT. My guess is that's probably 4 or 5 years from now.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll call it NFTs. I bet you we won't.
Yeah.
But as far as the technology, as far as like the technology being applied to those things, I think it'll probably be pretty seamless at some point where we don't even necessarily know we're interacting with the technology, but it's just going to become the new norm that, things are digitally authenticated.
Yeah.
So I think that my guess would be 3 to 5 years from there.
Yeah.
With us, like we're really trying in the podcasting space to model some ways that content creators can start to use NFTs, but it's challenging because there's a lot to learn in the space. And so, we've been working on thinking through this project and talking with people and getting feedback on it and changing things for like 9 months before now we're like finally ready to like launch it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a challenge.
Yeah. It's really exciting to me. in doing my research, and again, if you are entering this space, do your research. Like it is
just start learning.
Yeah.
Like just start learning and listen to podcasts about it. And education is so important with it.
Yeah, it's very it's impressive, and once you do like a deep dive on it, I think that's because I'm going to be 100% honest with you. So I came down here, like I said, we're recording this live at Podfest, and I came down here and I was very impressed with your presentation of it, because your explanation of the actual use cases and utilities of it, I think that's what's missing in the space. I think so often, I'm not going to blow anybody up, but you and I both know we witnessed some things that were like, people are so like, and there's NFTs, and then here's this place where you can buy them, and then here's this place you can do crypto, and you can do this, all these different cryptos, and it's overwhelming to the average person, to where if you don't have that type of background or don't even understand what it's doing, it can be very overwhelming. So I think you've got a lot of work in front of you. Like I think the project and the platform itself is, so new that I'm interested to see what comes for your use case in the future.
Right. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about decentralization.
Okay.
Because not a lot of people understand that concept as well. Right now, let's say, so this podcast is going to go up on YouTube, right? I created the podcast, I own the podcast, but I don't really, because YouTube has control of my podcast. So, can you explain a little bit about how decentralization with NFTs, can you go into a little bit more depth about how that gives more control back to the creator?
Yeah. And I think one word's really important to think about here, and that's the word gatekeeper. So, YouTube is borrowed attention. Even Spotify is borrowed attention.
Yeah.
Hopefully, if you follow their rules, then they will give you some attention from some of their audience. That's kind of how content creation works. Right. A lot of people like podcasts because podcasting is somewhat decentralized, in a sense that you have an RSS feed that's independent from, YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts. All of those, they're distributors. But if Apple Podcasts shuts down right now, you still have your RSS feed that people could go to and subscribe to, and nobody can technically take your RSS feed away from you. That's one of the reasons that podcasting really stands out, as opposed to if you're just a YouTube creator.
Yeah.
If all of your eggs are in the YouTube basket, and, we've all heard stories of people that have, whether they've posted questionable content or not, sometimes not even the point, but there's some kind of misunderstanding, or there is questionable content, and then all of a sudden they're cut off from their YouTube audience.
Yeah.
I was in a session this morning where that happened with somebody's email account. Their email provider, where they run their business through, said, hey, because of your podcast, we're not going to let you send emails through our system anymore. Oh, wow. So initially they shut down their business overnight.
Yeah.
This platform did. So I think you have to understand who are the gatekeepers between you and your audience. There's probably an email provider. There's YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Those are all gatekeepers, where if you play by their rules, then they will let you, you'll get to reach people on their platforms. It's a great opportunity. It's worth playing by their rules.
Yeah.
Because of the people.
Yeah.
Decentralization, the concept is kind of direct access, where you're kind of cutting out the middlemen.
Yeah.
Financial industry, there's tons of middlemen, bankers, 3% of global GDP goes to banks.
Yeah.
Which is wild. 3% of all the money in the world goes to banks, even though only 50% of the world's population has bank accounts.
Wow.
So there's clearly tons of fees and overdraft fees and all of this stuff in finance world that's going, to the middlemen. So when we look at decentralization from an NFT standpoint, it gives you the ability to, because of the smart contract, to know who has your NFT, and for you to be able to interact with them. So you might not be able to, you'd have to use a platform to message them. But let's say I'm messaging my NFT holders through Descript, and then Descript shuts down. I don't necessarily lose all those people. We might have to go to another platform, but we still know who has our NFT, and because it's all on this public ledger. So I think at the end of the day, the smart contracts, the NFTs, because it's used through decentralized technology
Yeah.
that is initially built on a little bit of energy from everybody's computer.
Yeah.
That can't really be shut down unless every computer in the world is
Yeah.
shut down at the same time and wiped clean, which is very, very unlikely.
Yeah.
Then because of that, you're able to interact with your community, and you're able to know who's a part of your community, who's engaged with you, who's gotten your NFTs, who's your core audience without any platform. So it's kind of platform agnostic.
Yeah.
You're still going to have to use platforms to communicate with those people. But if one platform goes down or things change, then you don't have to start from scratch.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the value of like decentralization when it comes to NFTs is you get more direct access to your community without somebody having to give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down on whether you're able to communicate with them or not.
Yeah. That is, oh man, good explanation, dude. that is the most beautiful concept of this whole thing for me. Because when you think about it, yes, we're talking about these buzzwords like NFTs and cryptocurrency, but it's really a conversation about free speech and about the internet, about how, you are, you can right now, I mean, cancel culture is a thing. I mean, you can be literally silenced at any moment for, saying something that somebody else doesn't like.
Right.
And, you can reference like news articles about Elon Musk buying Twitter or in the hopes of free speech. But when it really boils down to it, at the moment, people can lose their entire livelihood. And that's just a beautiful thing that you've got that
Right.
backup for your life, essentially. Yeah. I've got backups of all these. My camera just went down on this side. We got a backup. Like you don't have that for me and you having a relationship. You know what I mean? So that's really just an intricate, And
it's initially, if Facebook goes down, if Facebook ceases to be in existence, which is very unlikely.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite content creators said, "Hey, I want to connect with the people that liked my page on Facebook." I can't really prove that. I can't come to him and say, "Hey, I liked you because Facebook's gone." I can't really prove that.
Yeah.
With the NFT side of things, you'll always be able to authenticate and show that you own it. Again, as long as technology is with us, which I believe it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
As long as technology is around, you would be able to authenticate you're part of this community because you own an NFT and there's a smart contract that is on a public ledger. So it's kind of complicated to find the right things, but through that technology, you can initially prove I am a part of this community, and that's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
You can sell it to somebody else, and then that will show that somebody else now owns that NFT. And that's why something like Bored Ape Yacht Club and CryptoPunks and some of these like what people call like blue chip NFT projects, like the big ones, they're just clubs. Yeah. It's access. You're paying for access to, if you and I knew that, list your 5 favorite celebrities were in this other room on the other side from us, would you pay to get in that room?
Yeah.
Maybe if they're the right people. That's all that a lot of the big crypto projects, that's what they are, is their access. You get access to parties, but really it's a clout thing. You're getting access to those people, and then you're getting access to private messaging boards where you're getting to collaborate with people. If the minimum buy price for a Bored Ape is $200,000, that there's probably some pretty high net worth people that are going to be able to help you solve some pretty big problems in there. So you're probably going to get some money back because of what you're going to learn.
Yeah.
There's not a ton of, the utility is the community in that sense. With a lot of what we're trying to do, like I don't have the ability to, I'm not famous. I don't have the ability to create the next Bored Ape Yacht Club. But what I do have the ability to do as a creator is to say, okay, let's see what kind of content, what kind of bonuses, what kind of resources we can create for our community, and then create that as exclusive access to our community. So that as our podcast listeners that buy an NFT connected to the podcast, they're getting extra bonuses. They're getting extra value, so that we can see who our super fans are. We can then see, who's the people in our community that are our most loyal fans. And also, like, as we're launching the show that we're launching, and I know we'll get into this, but, we're launching it with a 10,000 edition free NFT. I know some people might say, well, that's not very many. In my mind, it's like, that's a lot.
Yeah.
But I'm going to know forever who the 10,000 people that got our free NFT are. When that NFT sells out when it, claims out, I don't know, whatever language you want to use, when all of them are taken, If people want to sell it, they can.
Can I have one?
You can sign up. I gave you the link yesterday.
That's right.
Yeah.
I did take a picture of it. I'm going to put links to it in.
Yeah. And anybody
podcast.
can go. Like if you go to the business.media, that's the website for a podcast, and you can go there to claim your free NFT. If they're all taken when you do this, then you can buy one from someone else. And those people are the only ones who are going to get access to the first season of our podcast, which is going to be the business of entrepreneurship.
Man, that's amazing.
So by doing that, it's like, okay, you're getting, and this is really simple. Like we're wanting to educate people with one thing with this first NFT.
Yeah.
We're wanting people to see that at the very base level, by owning an NFT, you're getting access to content that somebody else doesn't have access to. Yeah. So like there's so much that we could educate and talk about with NFTs. At the very base level, I want people to understand by owning an NFT, you get access to something that someone else doesn't have. And so that's really like at the core level, that's why we call them access cards.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're really trying to break it down and keep it simple.
Yeah. It's amazing to me. I think you've actually just turned me into an NFT bro.
I love it. And honestly, it's really interesting. I've been told in the last couple weeks or the last couple of days, so many people have been like, this is the first NFT I've had. Mm-hmm. And that's like the goal for it. Like that's like we wanted this project to be available for people that they don't understand smart contracts. They don't need to. Like you need to understand like, okay, I want exclusive access to this item and to these resources, and NFTs are a authenticated way to prove that you claimed access to it. Yeah. And at the end of the day, if you want to claim it and then sell it to somebody else who wants access, if this podcast blows up in a couple of years from now, we're looking back at this episode and, it's top 10 podcasts or something, that's awesome. But you can better believe that more than 10,000 people are going to want to listen to season 1. And so then now our community actually has an asset. They have something that they can sell if they want to, or they can hold on to. If there was a series of episodes of Joe Rogan's podcast or Jordan Harbinger's podcast, and there was only 10,000 people able to listen to him, you better believe those would be valuable.
And those are going to be diehards.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to be diehards. And at any time, Joe Rogan or Jordan Harbinger or Dax Shepard, they can go back to that community and they can actually give additional value and say, man, thank you so much for being our diehards, for being there from day one. We want to do a live event together, or I'm going to do this summit and I'm going to give you access to it. Or, hey, I'm going to send you all actual, like really valuable NFT that then you can say, like, I'm going to send you all money. Like,
yeah.
Hey, this podcast has made me $10 million. I'm going to give $1 million of it back to my people. Like you have the ability to do that through NFTs.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That's epic, man. That is so bananas. And I really, I like this field so much. I do have to ask you something. I know I didn't prepare you for this one, but it just popped into my head.
Let's go for it.
So, and I think you kind of already explained it a little bit, but I've had someone tell me, oh, well, what happens if the power goes out? And I know you're not really focused on blockchain.
Yeah.
But, what happens if the power goes out? You don't have your NFT anymore. But it would take all of the power to go out everywhere in the entire world, an extinction level event for this to happen, right?
I think so. Don't quote me on this because, again, like I'm not like an expert in all of the technical side of things.
Sure.
But I'm pretty sure that So what I do know is I know that like blockchain is running based off of a ton of computers working together. So like the Bitcoin network is working off of tens of thousands of computers all around the world. I'm pretty sure every single one of those would have to go down and be wiped for the entire network to be wiped. Otherwise, I don't think it would work. But here, the thing that I do know is if there's an extinction level, like if all of the power goes out in America, you might lose your NFT, but guess what else you're losing? You're losing Chase. You're losing your access to your Chase account.
Yeah.
Chase is going under. Yeah. So the money you have, like,
it's not a thing.
No, it's not a thing. And if like there is truly like, if there's truly such a situation where like we are cut off from technology, like it's not just your crypto money you're losing. Like that's going to affect so many other things financially that like money that you feel like is secure in digital bank accounts, like that's not going to be secure.
Yeah.
So I think that's the other thing is, and that's, I mean, some people have cold wallets too, which is like where they're actually taking the code and the addresses for their wallets. They're making it not public. So it's not a public wallet address. It's a private wallet address that only they know the address to. And they're actually taking that into what's called cold storage. They're putting it in a safe. So it's initially like a digital wallet address and password that's in people's safe. And so, yeah, I don't know, but I think we have a lot bigger problems if that happens. From an investment side, like we put a lot of our money into the S&P 500, like as far as like retirement goes, because like, in my opinion, it's pretty safe to bet on the top 500 companies in America.
Yeah.
Because you're initially betting on America. If America loses, it does not matter what mutual funds my money's in.
That's true.
So it's like, you have to think about it like, yeah, if power goes out all around the world, you probably lose your Bitcoin. But if that happens, there's a lot bigger problems you're concerned with. That's
totally true. Well, I'm glad we solved that. We solved all the world's problems today.
Yeah. So yeah, that might be your concern might be real, but there's just going to be a lot bigger problems if that happens.
Yeah. Well, I also, I want to take it back 1 second to, we talked a lot about big tech companies. Do you think people are finally realizing how valuable their data is?
I think so. I'm a little bit more in the camp where like, I kind of believe that like everybody probably has all my info already that wants to.
Right.
So I think the transparency is a good, I think the aspect that all of this technology and crypto and stuff is bringing about more transparency is great, because I think that's just going to have a lot of good reciprocal effects. But yeah, I think people are going to start taking back control of their data. I expect over the next couple of years, there's going to be a lot of people that get into crypto that lose a lot of money because they like lose their seed phrases and just like some of the complicated stuff where then it's like, crap, I don't know how to get into this wallet and it has this money in it and stuff. So I think people are probably going to start to realize like there's certain data that everybody's going to have access to. Everybody can probably advertise to me at any point, but there's also certain data we really need to protect. And we need to like keep under wraps. And I think people are getting more aware of that.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, I think what you're doing is just a beautiful thing. And I think if people, like I said, do their research and figure it out, you know, I'm excited that there are people with a passion. I can see your passion for it. And I'm excited there are people out there that are doing what you do and are way more knowledgeable than I am. But I mean, you're making changes, man.
Yeah, I'm trying to. And I mean, another conference that's happening in this building right now is like the Florida Bitcoin Convention.
So, serious?
Yeah, there's people there's people like literally like across the hall that are way more knowledgeable than me about this. But I think for me, like my passion is storytelling. Like my passion is getting stories out there that need to get out there. Like that turned into a podcasting agency where we help podcasters get out there. And now, you know, we're continuing to do that. We have a bunch of shows that we manage, but our passion really is over the next couple of years, like we want to model for content creators through our podcast, The Business. We want to model how some of this new technology can be used by content creators to engage their community. Because I think any show, any story, like you need a community to get a story out there. And so our hope at the end of the day, it's all about getting stories out there that need to be out there. And so we're hoping to be, you know, I don't really care about being like the first. We're not the first.
Yeah.
There's other people that have, you know, done stuff with podcasting and NFTs. I think what we're doing is unique right now. It's unique in the market, but I think the main thing for us is like, we want to start trying. We want to start figuring out what are some ways to use NFTs with podcasts and with getting stories out there. And, you know, 6 months from now, a year from now, we'll probably have a lot of lessons that we learned. We'll probably see a lot of things that were really successful that we did. And we'll probably see some things about how we're using NFTs that are not that successful and that we change. But hopefully our project can really help a lot of people to begin to understand NFTs as giving you, you know, exclusive, authenticated access to really valuable information or resources or bonuses or trainings or, you know, events that you wouldn't get elsewhere. So
Awesome.
That's really kind of our vision for all this.
That's awesome, man. Well, I really love what you're doing. You know, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but where can people find out about this? And do you guys have social media? where can people go?
Yeah, I would say the best place to go is thebusiness.media. That's the website for our podcast, this new podcast that we're launching. It's called The Business. Each 6-episode season will focus on a different industry of business. So we'll take a 6-episode deep dive into understanding, maybe one season might be the business of podcasting, and another might be the business of starting an Amazon business. But you're going to learn a lot about a specific industry and business on each season. And so that's the business podcast. We have a variety of different NFTs that we're going to be rolling out with each season, and those will give you access to different bonuses and different things. But we also have our community card NFT. At the date of this recording, we still have a lot of those available for free. There's 10,000 of those. I encourage everybody to go. You can claim it. And it's really, really simple to do. You don't need to create a digital wallet. You don't need to, pay gas fees. You don't need to do all this stuff, because the way that we set it up and the partners we're working with are making it really easy for people to get it. So if you're listening, you're like, I don't have any NFTs, let this be your first NFT.
Yeah.
Let it be your first NFT. Yeah. Go and claim it for free. It takes about 60 seconds, and you can do that at thebusiness.media. And then when we release the podcast in July, the first season of the podcast is only going to be available to those that hold the community card NFT.
Awesome, man. That's so exciting. I'm really looking forward to what happens.
Yeah. As soon as we hit stop on this, you're going to get your NFT.
Sweet. Sick. All right. Well, I love what you're doing, man. I think it's just, the bee's knees, and I'm really looking forward to what happens for you in the future. And I think, I can see your vision for it, and it's just really impressive to me. So kudos.
Thank you. Yeah. And I love what you're doing too. This is a great community. Again, like, our heart is stories. Our heart is, doing that. And that's why we didn't even mention this, but like you talk about a lot about nonprofits here, and that's a lot of your passion, but like 50% of all the revenue that's generated from this show is actually going to be going out to grants to nonprofits and small businesses. And those grants are going to be decided by our NFT holders. So our community is going to decide where the profit from our show goes, because we want our community to be able to make decisions and say, hey, as a community, we're making this show successful. It's generating revenue. We're getting sponsors. We're selling NFTs. And so every quarter, our NFT community is going to be distributing tens of thousands of dollars in grants to nonprofits and businesses that are making an impact. And so,
wow.
And again, all of this is possible through some of this technology that's coming out.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. I feel like I'm living in the future. It's so cool.
Depending, you kind of are.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's a very meta thing to think, but we kind of are living in the future. Yeah, so it's exciting.
I can't go too far in the fourth wall or my mind will explode,
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I love it, man. It's really exciting. We're winding down towards the end of the episode. Every episode I ask the same guest one question in 2 parts. And I normally get a deer in the headlight looks because I don't really prepare them for it, but that's all right. So what was the last goal that you completed, and what's the next goal that you want to set for yourself?
Yeah, honestly, it's related to what we're talking about, because we just launched our first NFT, our community card, 2 days ago.
Okay.
That's been something I've pushed back. It's been something we've been spending a lot of time thinking through, and I get stuck in my head. I get stuck planning.
Yeah.
And sometimes I fail to execute or I take longer. So it's a big goal that we launched our first NFT, and we're really excited, and I'm really proud of that. And I'm proud of, all the work that we've put into it. And our next goal is to launch our gold card, which is our NFT that we'll launch in about a month. And that's kind of our more premium. That's a paid version. That's kind of giving people more exclusive access to our community. But it's related to what we're talking about, because this has been such a focus. This is a project we feel passionate about. We feel like it's worthwhile to get out, and we need to get it out. So the fact that we got our first podcast NFT launched 2 days ago, that's the goal. And the next one is to get our gold card launched next month.
Yeah. Well, I see it, man. I see it. Misfits, go check them out. Thebusiness.media?
Yeah, thebusiness.media. And, that's for the podcast. For me personally, Seth Silvers. You can find me on pretty much any any social media platform at that. And my business's website is successwithstories.com. And that's where you can find out information about, our agency or get in touch with us. So yeah, there's a lot of ways. You're not going to have a hard time getting a hold of me if you start searching for us.
Fantastic. Misfits, go check them out. It is a wonderful thing, man. I love what you're doing, and it's very intriguing, and it's the future. I'm looking forward to it, man.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been a blast. You have a good afternoon, all right?
Sounds good.
Thank you. Well, Misfits, we did it. That's our episode. I want to thank you so much for listening, and thanks again to our sponsors. If you want to support any of the sponsors of this podcast, there are affiliate links on the sponsors tab of our website over at www.misfit-heroes.com. You can also find links to all of our social media there, so be sure to follow us for immediate, up-to-date info about the podcast. Please, Misfits, if you enjoyed this podcast and you want to help me out, do me a favor. Hit the subscribe button down below so you're notified of new episodes as they're released, and make sure to leave a rating or review of the show on Apple Podcasts and YouTube. Truly, Misfits, I love you. Thank you so much for listening. And until the next episode, be kind, love one another, and be a hero.